Well, hello. Thanks for joining our RenderMan for Blender session. Um, I'm just polishing one of my RenderMan teapots here it's, for the RenderMan Art and Science Fair, which we're a part of. We have a great lineup today of some great speakers and me too. And I'm going to kick things off just by talking about non-commercial RenderMan and commercial RenderMan and what's the difference. And we're going to learn a little bit about what makes or what puts the render into RenderMan. How's that? So let me bring up my media. And so I have a little demo that I'm going to show. But the first part, I'm just going to pause on this slide. So we have some new features in RenderMan 24, which was released on January. I mean, the 29th of June. So I have a pandemic brain, excuse me. We have two features that are experimental and new. Those are XPU and Stylized Looks. And they're only available in the commercial product. I wanted to emphasize that the non-commercial RenderMan, which is freely available, fully functional, and offers all of the production proven technology that we have used and developed at Pixar and ILM and MPC, is readily available and can be used even on our, RenderMan and Adobe challenge that we just announced. So some of the things that make non-commercial RenderMan great are our new RenderMan for Blender plugin, which Ian Shui will be talking about, which is really nice. We have an RIS framework, so our modern path tracer is really fast. It's CPU based, but it allows you to swap out different types of integrators. So in some renderers, you might just have a path tracer, like a unidirectional path tracer. RenderMan allows you to swap out a bidirectional path tracer or an occlusion integrator, or define the light transport in your scene in arbitrary ways, which is cool. We have Pixar lights and filters. So one of the things that makes RenderMan cool is that we use it on our movies like Coco, where we had a scene that had 8 million lights in it. That means RenderMan can handle 8 million lights. So if you want to load up your scene with 100,000 lights, it's going to render no problem with RenderMan. It handles complexity really well. That's what I'm trying to say. We have shaders and hair from Pixar and ILM. So these are actually production shaders that we ship, which are cool. We have live rendering, so it's very interactive. And as opposed to doing a bunch of pre-computations and baking and caching, the live rendering, you hit render and it goes as fast as it can without having to cache anything. So you can do subsurface scattering and direct illumination, all that stuff live. And we have good color management. We have support for USD, which is an open source technology from Pixar for it's good backbone technology for transporting geometry and scene assets around and manipulating them in creative and collaborative ways. AOVs, secondary passes, are very powerful in RenderMan. Support for OSL, we've fully moved all our patterns over there, and we have my favorite feature, ETC. So it's got all the stuff. And then commercial RenderMan has XPU. It's fast, but XPU is limited to look development. You really want to have RIS for the final frame renders. We have Stylized Looks, which is also powerful, but it's just the 1.0 phase, and we're still perfecting it, so or polishing it. So let me just show some of the workflows in XPU and Stylized Looks, and then everything else after that you'll be seeing can be done in non-commercial RenderMan. All right, so XPU and RenderMan for Blender. I have a re-rendering session here that I can start by going to my RenderMan menu by right-clicking in the screen, selecting IPR, and voila, I have my scene rendering. So that's rendering XPU. It's reasonably fast. I have a shader here that's complex enough that I exported it from Substance Painter, so it's a 4K texture. and I'm able to move my lights around, grab them in the scenes, and see that all update in the Blender viewport. I'm using the denoiser, so it starts off a little smooth and then gets more detail as it converges, but it converges within a couple seconds, so that's kind of cool. Now, when we talk about look development, one of the things, if you watch the DNEG panel earlier, one of the requirements was, how do you manage complexity and how do you manage variations? Well, if you have a complex model like this, it has lots of different parts, and the director comes along and says, can all those parts be a different color though? I know I like this orange shader, but I'd like them to all be different colors. How do you do that? Well, with Pixar Surface, which has, if you see over in the left-hand column there, this production shader has 200 parameters. I'm just joking, it has over 250. But in the diffuse color, I've plugged in a Pixar Vary, and what the Pixar Vary allows me to do is basically hijack that texture that I created in Substance, and then add variations to that texture, and then adjust them on a per object basis. So I'm just changing one parameter, and I'm going to change the colors on all the different pieces of my teapot all at once. So you can see that, and the director might come by and say, well, that looks great. I wanted them all different colors, but I wanted them different shades of orange. Like, I don't want teal and yellow and green. Can you make it a little more subtle? Well, I can dial back that variation, and this is what we call non-destructive complexity. So I can create complexity, but it's easily adjusted. So if you're working on a shot that has a lot of pieces and you want to take notes, you don't want to have 50 different shaders attached to all those pieces. Just use a Pixar Vary, get that variation in there. And here I'm adjusting the saturation and the luminance of that teapot. So some of the pieces are getting lighter and some of them are getting darker. And now the director comes along and can say, well, that looks great. Or maybe you want to adjust that one foot and make a different color. That's also easy to do. So this is how you can manage complexity well. And this is what XPU facilitates. Let's talk about stylized rendering. So stylized rendering in RenderMan for Blender is interesting. Here's my live rendering session, and I'm going to switch over to Stylized Looks. First, to enable it, I just enable Stylized Looks. So this is a diffuse shader. It has a nice strong signal that I can feed to the display filter to get a nice result. I'm going to enable a hatching on it. So now you'll see the magic happen. And here's my stylized rendering. So now I have hatching that's based on the diffuse signal that I'm sending it. That hatching is actually 8 progressive textures. So in the dark areas, they're actually crisscrossing. In the light areas, they're just kind of like just a single like sparse hatch. And I created all those textures, just hand drawing them. And then I plugged them into my hatch display filter there on the right-hand side. And now I'm going to add some lines to it. Since I have a background in illustration, I like lines that are darker in shaded, shadowy areas and lighter in areas that are illuminated. So I created a line that would do that. I can do a lot of different things with lines, but in this case, I wanted something that would have a little bit of an illustrative feel. And so I've got my thing going, and I'm going to blow out the light a little bit just to push that cross hatching to the darker areas of the teapot and make it more like an illustration. And here we go. Since we're live and since I have a live rendering session, I have the ability to go in and take that light and move it around and reorientate it to the different areas of the teapot to illuminate it in different ways. And this allows me to explore the scene, and I kind of call it a live drawing. So it's an actual live drawing that I can zoom into. You see, as we zoom into like the gears, the line thickness stays the same because the line thickness is calculated in pixel space or screen space. So if I zoom out or I zoom in, the lines are the same thickness. I can find interesting angles. Like some of those notches and gears look pretty cool, but I can slightly orientate that light in a different way just to get the shadows just so. And one of the things that we could do to take this further and make it more complex is start adding more lines and more display filters for hatching that would actually create more complexity in how the lines looked and how the lines felt. But even in this very simple setup, it's already looking kind of cool. And I'm just gonna jump around here and find a nice little drop shadow on that little, you know, you have gears and you have bolts and you have nuts. Everything else is basically a widget or a doohickey. That's that's um, that's a thought that I want to leave you with. So you have widgets and doohickeys. We can zoom out, and that looks like something that is kind of a complete look. And that is how stylized looks are implemented. And our implementation does the live interactive rendering, which is great. And finally, let's invite Ian Shui on the stage, and you can download Non-Commercial RenderMan right now, and Ian's going to tell you all about the work he's done on this plugin. Um, and I'm going to be here as well. So, hey, Ian.
Hey, so I'm Ian Shea. I'm one of the developers on the RenderMan for Blenders effort. So, sort of just a recap of what happened since our last Art and Science Fair. Uh, like Dylan said, we released RenderMan 24 on June 29th. Includes XPU, which is our new renderer for that uses your GPU and CPU. Uh, it includes Material X Llama, which is our new layering system that was written by our friends at ILM. Stylized Looks, which is our photorealistic solution. We have new live stats, and we have a rewritten effort for Blender. So let's talk about what's new in 24.1. So for 24.1, we added support for Blender 2.93 LTS, which is the latest version. We have textured lights now in the viewport. So for certain lights, you'll actually see the color or the texture that you've selected on the lights in the viewport before you've actually started IPR.
I love
And
the slim texture on that light.
you can also sort of treat
Classic.
HDR image that you have on your dome light. We added a new UI for adding user attributes. Um, you can use this to sort of do variations of shading on with the same material on multiple objects. So here I've added a color attribute to one of the objects, and then you can use a Pixar attribute node in your shading network to look up that attribute. And here you can see that I'm using the same material but have different colors for each of the objects. And then we have a new UI for adding metadata for OpenEXR images. So you can see that you can add the key, and then you can add any type of value that OpenEXR supports. So ints, strings, arrays, and stuff like that. And we have many, 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 many bug fixes in this release.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so
It seems like a
thanks to
lot.
everybody who's reported bugs. I've I've gotten bug reports from our forums, Discord, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, and LinkedIn and GitHub. So please keep those things coming.
That's great. I've used the plugin. I think it's a really great plugin, and I've been enjoying using it. And you can run the denoiser like in the viewport, and there's a lot of things that make it really pretty slick. I'm impressed, Ian. Thank you.
Thanks.
And did you have any final words that you'd like to impart everyone with?
Just go out and use it. I mean, you know, non-commercial RenderMan is free to use. Blender is free. It's open source, so there's nothing really stopping you from using it. So
I think that's great. Well, thanks, Ian. Next, we're going to bring up Anselm and Cora. And he'll be arriving on stage shortly. Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Anselm, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Excellent.
So it's quite interesting to see that we have RenderMan for Blender now. And I believe like lots of creative persons, they would want to get something that will be of value to them. And that's also something that I think RenderMan is bringing to the table for Blender users. So that extra level of freedom, that extra level of professionalism, I think RenderMan actually covers it all with lots and lots of features. So what I would like to do is I have a tiny demo of some impressive things that I found the first time I tried RenderMan for Blender. And I think it's going to be nice to share it with the community so that they could see what they can get out of it once they install the app and start working with it. So
okay, that'd be great. Yeah.
So I will proceed to share this with you guys now. We've all seen the amazing movies by Pixar Animation Studios and how incredible the rendering technology is. From the way the amazing render engine interprets light, materials, colors, and so on with an unprecedented production value, it is safe to say that RenderMan is extremely reliable for producing high-quality visuals with a consistent picture quality. And with the release of RenderMan 24 for Blender, the power of creating high-quality production visuals is now in the hands of the world's most popular open-source 3D content creators. And as someone who consistently tests rendering engines for Blender, it is actually interesting to see how easy it is for you to set up the RenderMan engine and also work with the Blender add-on. To actually get started with RenderMan once you're done with the installation process is as simple as right-clicking and click on Use RenderMan. Now, this is one of the most easiest ways of getting into a rendering engine that I have found for Blender, contrary to fiddling around the render properties section and trying to figure out how to set up a rendering engine. So with that ready, go over to your viewport rendering and then you can see RenderMan in action. Now, this is very, very nice. Now, there's a couple of things that RenderMan brings to the table that you probably wouldn't see with any other rendering engine for Blender. Now we're going to explore more of these and also talk about the cool presets, the light linking, the light groups, and even way more stuff that you can get. So with our brand new scene loaded up right here, let's take a look at some of the things that impressed me the first time I opened RenderMan for Blender. So for you to actually see what your rendering is going to look like directly on your viewport, you need to right click, go over to the RenderMan, render IPR. Now this way you can preview what your final render is going to look like directly in your viewport. And from here you can start making some final tweaks. Now, in terms of light, you need to convert your light to RenderMan light for you to have these things working. So add the RenderMan node to this, and then you can increase the intensity and also the exposure depending on what you want. Now, in terms of interactivity during your render time, you can make multiple copies of light, move them around your viewport, and get some very interesting stuff. By the way, there's a whole lot of lights that you can also have access to. If you go over to the RenderMan section, go over to lights, you can see all of these beautiful lights. And in terms of filters, you can also attach a couple of light filters depending on what you want to create. But now let's talk about even more interesting stuff. For this example, I'm just going to select this and change this light to a given color, select these other lights, and then increase this by 20 just to make sure that we'll have more lights coming from there. Actually, let's make that 25. Now, if you don't want to go back and forth tweaking this light, RenderMan has provided you with something even way cooler that you can use. So if you just simply right click and go over to the RenderMan context menu, you'll notice that we have the light mixer group. Now within the light mixer group, you can go over to light mixer editor, and from here you can start editing and mixing your lights how you want. So I can click on the plus sign, click down, add the lights that you want, click on the plus sign to add them. So if we would like to add all of this just to set up a light group, we can easily do this. Now with your light group here, you can proceed to do all of the tweaks and changes that you like. So in this case, if we would like to turn off some of these lights, we can obviously go ahead and turn this off, and you can see that happening. And by the way, you can also create different light groups depending on how you would like to render your model. Now this makes it way easier for lighting artists to harness the power of RenderMan and create and also edit their lights the way they choose. despite the fact that you have your light mixer, there is also a light linking editor. So with your light linking editor, you can do even way more cooler stuff. So in this case, let's say we have this light and I wouldn't want this light to affect certain parts of our model. If I click on the drop down button, I can select the light which I want, click on the plus sign to add it. Within the object section, we'll click on the drop down, select the object that we want, and also click on the plus sign to add that as well. So at this point, we can now choose if we want our light to illuminate or not illuminate the object. The number of objects you can throw in is as much as you have within your scene, and the number of lights that you can use to control the lighting is also dependent on the number of lights you have within your scene. RenderMan also comes with some impressive material presets that would save you tremendous time. Instead of thinking about how to make the shaders, how to calculate these things, and how to tweak them to actually get something happening, all you need to do is select the object which you would like to apply material to, right click, go over to where you have your preset, and then you can either open the preset browser or you can select from a truckload of categories that exist. And in this case, let's say we'd like to give a wooden sort of material to this. All we need to do is right click, go all the way to presets, open up the preset browser, and then we can search for wood. So if we take a look at the wood section, we can find the kind of wood that we want. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select the oak wood, click on the drop down button and click on import and assign to selected. And once this is done, you can click on OK, and automatically you would notice that you have it right here. Now, despite the fact that you have access to materials, you also have access to a couple of environments that RenderMan ships with. So just in case you're thinking about some environments that you can use, you have a couple that you can play with. So you can just go ahead and throw this in and get some very impressive rendering happening. And while we're still on the topic of textures and how you can work with materials, you can now easily convert your cycles shaders to RenderMan. And how you can do this is extremely simple. Select the object, go over to your material properties, and then you can convert your cycles shader to RenderMan. Now you can do this for individual objects, or you can simply click on convert all cycles to RenderMan, and this would convert all of the cycles shaders that you have within your scene to RenderMan. Despite all of these things that we've looked at, there are certain utilities and tools that impressed me the first time I tried RenderMan for Blender. So right over here, you'll be able to find the scale resolution. Now with this, you can drop down the resolution within your viewport rendering. So depending on your computer performance, these can come in extremely handy. There's also a very cool interactive refinement feature that also exists here. So you can choose from 0 all the way down. And of course, there is also the edit crop window. With the edit crop window, you can edit, refine, and also preview a specific area of your model and do some very nice look devs to just that specific part, as you can focus on a given area at one time. There's a snapshot feature that RenderMan also offers, and this allows you to make render snaps directly in Blender. For comparison, snapshots can be previewed in the image viewer, and this is a very handy feature that allows you to make informed decisions on lighting, looks, and also staging. Now we've seen some amazing things that RenderMan can do. Let's talk about something even more impressive. RenderMan ships with an end panel. With your RenderMan end panel, you can do a lot of things. Instead of right-clicking, going over to your properties, you can play with the preset browser directly from the end panel. You can start and stop your interactive preview rendering. You can add cameras, lock the cameras, preview these cameras within your viewport, make these cameras visible within your viewport or within the rendering time, set your depth of field, set the distance as much as you want, play with lights, add different kinds of light filters, and you can even play with the light editors. You may also want to take a look at one of my personal favorite, and that is the RenderMan Live Statistics. So this is just super awesome. You can check out the diagnostics and see how much memory is being used, the rays that are being fired per second, the first ray, the first pixel, and also your first iteration. Now, if you take a look at the top left corner of your screen, you would also notice that we have the very same statistics running right there. It is very interesting to see that RenderMan for Blender checks most of the features Blender artists would need to make high quality production visuals. So if there's any Blender artist looking for a wonderful free rendering tool that they can use, RenderMan for Blender is here with all of these features, and how you choose to wield the power of this amazing tool is totally up to you. All right.
That was great.
So that was the incredible features I found the first time I tried RenderMan for Blender. And I think it actually checks most of the boxes For those that are also thinking about doing caustics, RenderMan actually knocks it out of the park. You know, unlike the fake caustics that we get trying to make these things happen with cycles, you can definitely get real, well-calculated caustics with RenderMan. So I kind of, yeah.
Did you try the VCM integrator?
I haven't really.
Bidirectional? I
haven't really done something that is worth showing, but for sure it does have some very wonderful.
What one cool thing you can do with the caustics is make a disco ball, so you can make a sphere and make it like hard facets and shine a bright light on it, and it'll do the whole disco ball thing.
Oh.
And if you use VCM,
probably that's
specular.
Yeah, that should be like a tutorial idea.
Yeah, it'd be a good one.
So I mean, you guys should watch out for Ask NK. I might probably do that there, just in case. Yeah. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. All right.
Great, thank you. We're happy to have you here as our Blender expert and represent the Blender community. So we appreciate you taking the time. It's late your time, right?
Yeah, it's 9:30 p.m. my time.
Yeah, where are you based?
I'm based in North Cyprus currently. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you staying up late and showing us your Blender know-how. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much, man.
Cheers. And next up, we have a creative director from England. His name's Eugene Rakansky, and he's the author of the RenderMan Fundamentals.
Whoops.
Oh, what happened?
Sorry. You know your catchphrase of "No teapots are ever harmed in the making."
Yeah,
I might have.
Oh,
sorry.
you just. Uh-oh. No.
Sorry. Just to clarify, this was the donor teapot for the model for the other one. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll send you some glue.
Let me share my presentation with you.
Yeah, what do you have for us? I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, well, you're in for a treat. So let me so I've been using RenderMan for a long time, and and I do the RenderMan fundamentals as well. And Blender for me is a new piece of software, and it's cool that I've been asked to do this, because I kind of come at it from a slightly different angle. I kind of come at rendering and visuals and this sort of stuff from a commercial perspective. Having worked in the industry for a number of years, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of reasons why RenderMan is killer in Blender for you've done commercial work.
You've done a lot of music videos and really kind of pushed like motion graphics and things like that.
Yeah.
So you have a different experience, which is great.
I got a different
killer features. You mean killer features in a good way? I hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is me, Eugene Rakansky. Creative RenderMan artist, and do the RenderMan fundamentals training. Just a quick story before we begin. I just thought I would just give you a little bit of background, so you know a little bit about me. Basically, my career really started with a 7-foot missile, and this kind of this story is relevant because it demonstrates to you that if you want something in life from a client or a project perspective, you can easily go out and get it. So in 2002, I set about going to work with the Prodigy. They were a band that I wanted to work with, and I figured out all I needed to do was figure out someone that I knew who knew someone connected to the band. And luckily and oddly enough, I went to a wedding once and met the designer of the clothes with Keith Flint. And I said to them, "I've got a great idea. Can I pitch an idea to you?" And they were like, "Great." And I had two ways I could pitch my idea. The first way was I could print it on A4 paper, I could ring binder it badly and then sort of print a really dodgy cover on the front. Or what I could do is I could build a 7-foot missile with out of real missile pieces, and put a DVD in the warhead at the top and drive it to one of the houses whilst they were on tour. And that's exactly what I did. And from there,
I just want to say that's a crazy story. I love it.
Good. I'm still dining out on that story. So from there, I then went on to work with a whole host of bands, from Him to Rihanna to Oasis. And the thing that I learned very quickly is that by being different really attracts the cool clients. It really attracts the people that you want to work with. This is some tour visuals I did for Madonna's opening for her world tour. And these are just a whole bunch of other little clients that I've kind of worked with over the past, I don't know, 29 years. So that's a little intro to me. So why RenderMan for Blender? Well, you know, it's been battle tested since 1984, you know. To me, it has incredible quality and stability. And, you know, when I was working, you know, in the commercial sector, you know, I always used pretty much RenderMan for all of my jobs, because to me, it always had that look. It always had that style that I wanted to kind of present. It has incredibly versatile creative toolkit and really empowers the artist to new levels. And what I mean by that is that things like the Pixar Surface, you know, yes, you can make nice metals, but you start pushing them sliders and you can actually create some really interesting non-photo real materials and looks as well. And the beauty of that is that actually you can create whatever your mind really comes up with. And I guess, you know, from another strong point is that RenderMan is you know, pulling in technology from, you know, Pixar, as in the studio, you know, Industrial Light and Magic, and Disney as well. So, you know, incredible materials for all. You know, you have the Pixar Disney BSDF, which I like to think is the sort of, you know, the kind of the PBR Uber shader. If you're new to 3D, this is probably a good material to sort of start with. The Pixar Surface is, you know, incredibly creative, and you can do, you know, pretty much whatever you want with it, and then couple that with a Pixar Layer Surface as well. But now you have the Material X Llama, and, you know, when you start to work in that, you know, the training wheels are off. You can, you know, that's when, you know, you can really start to push your kind of creativity. Just a bunch of pictures from, you know, from Pixar, and also from the fundamentals to sort of show volumes and you know, smudgy, cool little fingerprints you can put on the teapots if I hadn't broken it. You know, gumball machines are always good, and, you know, if you and I'll show you why the gumball is in here, because it's all come out of the new Substance to RenderMan plugin, and of course Material X. So, you know, used by Industrial Light and Magic, you know, Industrial Light and Magic, you know, on all their stuff, and now, you know, and now you have it as well. And so, you know, the interesting thing is you can do car paint materials and then add a bit of grime, add a bit of dust over the top. You know, not everything in not everything in the world is clean and pristine.
Car paint's an interesting one because, you know, like a plastic might just have one kind of diffuse lobe and a specular lobe, but car paint could have multiple specks with like dirt on top. And
yeah,
the flexibility of Llama, you're kind of getting into that, like allows you just layer things up arbitrarily. However,
yes, yeah, yeah, and I think it's thinking how things are built in the real world. You know, I've done a lot of research into car paint, speaking to car companies and actually people who paint, you know, who actually mix and paint cars.
just to understand, the various coats and layers that are actually applied from the primer through to the clear coat. So it's once you start to understand that, Llama becomes this thing that is less scary, because you just need to understand how it's built in the real life and try and mimic that within RenderMan. A couple of Pixar surfaces in action, and a few more pieces that I've made for just personal projects. And of course, RenderMan is incredible at volumes, and incredible at hair as well. Can't take the credit for these. These are all done by Paul. So in future RenderMan fundamentals, we're going to start tackling hair.
I just want to say, you probably should change his name from Paul Sheehy to Paul Sheary, because he's so good at hair.
I think he's in here somewhere, so maybe he'll
maybe he'll bring in on that.
Yeah. Let's just get him an invite quick. And of course, even more beautiful hair. And I think when Paul did these, it's you can really see that RenderMan is great for all sorts of things, but when you see these hair renders, it really does kind of actually sort of cement the quality that you can actually get from RenderMan.
And there's two aspects of this. There's the power of how much hair you can render and how good you can make that hair that you render look. And there's we have two advanced hair models, and so you can get stuff that looks really realistic. And these are the same models that we use for our own productions, and ILM uses, and MPC. So this is bleeding edge technology, really.
Yeah.
Or cutting edge, I guess, would be the appropriate.
Yep.
word.
Cutting edge. Yeah. Well done.
Thanks.
Nicely segued onto state-of-the-art rendering technology. This thing which everyone has sort of touched on, this XPU used for look dev and material creation, and then RIS is used for your final frames. And again, in the fundamentals, I'm gonna, if you all stick around for the next session, I'll dive a lot deeper into that XPU and RIS pipeline. But you can see here that.
And for some people might not know what the fundamentals are, but they're a series of training that you've done for us.
Yes.
That are about RenderMan, and you're launching a whole new series for 24 and all the new features.
Yes, and the good thing about it is that, I get all the inside scoop of how artists at Pixar work from them and you guys, and then I mix that with industry and commercial experience, and then pass that onwards. So the nice thing about them is that you're kind of, I'm teaching you via everyone else how the artists and the studio at Pixar kind of work.
And you make them look really good too. Like they're really smart and snazzy.
Well, they take a bit of time, which is, I think people want them quicker, which I understand, but they do take a bit of time. And incredible XPU look dev. So the concept of XPU in this phase one currently sort of being there to look dev your your single models, whether it's bowling balls or bowling pins or whatever it is, and also for you to create material libraries, so set up a nice little sort of XPU look dev scene. And again, if you come to the next session, I'll be giving one away for you. So it's this really interesting thing where you can work, with all of the resources of your machine. You create your assets, you can create your material libraries, which the great thing is, save them to your preset browser, and then you can use them on all your other projects as well, which in turn, for a commercial perspective, is incredibly useful. You don't have to keep going, you don't have to keep remaking golds and chromes and, you know, woods and that, you know, and then, you know, render them, or, you know, render your beautiful frames all inside of Riz and impress your friends.
And the preset browser now works in Substance Painter too. So we just announced that. It's been updated for Llama, and it can work across all your DCCs. So it's,
all your DCCs.
Anyway.
Yeah. Just a picture of XPU. This has come from the RenderMan for Blender Kickstarter that I've made. I mean, difficult to show XPU off in a still, but here's a bit of text that probably you know, tries to emphasize that it is fast. You know, use within the parameters that it's designed for. Don't throw 100 lights at it. You know, and you know, again, come to the next session. He says, trying to sell the next session, and I'll give you an XPU look dev scene. I
love the robot too. It's super cute.
Yeah, he's cool. Yeah,
he
is cool. And things like integrators, which is sort of, you know, something that not many people really kind of use in RenderMan or Blender, or not use, but necessarily know about. You know, the fact that you can debug your scenes, and just see what, you know, just see what is going on with the light without having to, you know. So again, incredibly useful. And you know, the lights within RenderMan are as well, you know, fantastic. Allows you to throw them up like a director of photography boss. You know, they're based on real world lights. You've got a whole bunch of them. And the amazing thing is that you can refine them. So you can, you know, you can adjust the cone angle, the softness. I forget what the couple of other things what I wanted to say, but yeah, they're just, I think for me, the lighting within RenderMan actually is, you know, and the light filters, just because you can stay in reality, but you can break from reality as well. And that's the cool thing, you know.
Well, and you can adjust the light shadow. So there's some like non-photoreal things that you can do. Like you can change the shadows and make them blue. That's cool.
Yes.
And the filters are powerful because they can be a sphere, and you can move that sphere around and just kill like specular within that spherical area, or dial it down or dial it back in ways that are unique to RenderMan, really. Which is kind of the secret sauce for lighting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, and again, you know that you're using, you know, the same tech as you know, the people who are making the films that you love. Not sure what's coming next now, and
there's more.
And light filters, so you can craft your lights with barn doors and cookies and gobos, you know, make, you know, which again is something that, you know, people know exists, but not necessarily understand how they're used in production in a real film or photography shoot, but the fact that you have them with inside RenderMan as well, just, you know, makes it amazing. And, you know, luckily for you guys, you also have the incredible Pixar camera in your toolkit. And I'm going to stop talking and just look at the picture for a few seconds and tell me if your renderer can do that.
Mine can, but I use RenderMan. Okay.
And I think the things to note is the way the bokeh, you say bokeh, I say bokeh, you know, is darker in the center, you know, and it gets brighter on the outside. And, you know, it's such a fantastic picture that, you know, if you're ever in doubt about RenderMan, this, like, to me, this picture just, you know, does it.
It's a great example of okay bokeh.
Okay bokeh. And if that wasn't enough, plus display and sample filters, which again are really interesting. The fact that you can color correct and adjust your renders in real time. You got the phaser noise from the sandy dews of Pisana, you know, come all this way, and you can use it. You know, Industrial Light and Magic, I'm going to get this wrong, but Industrial Light and Magic, I think, used it on the dune, you know, to create the dunes in the scene, right? And that's where it originated from, I think.
It's stunning.
It's incredible. But luckily, you can even break it and use it to make your own, you know, non-fungible tokens as well. You got the incredible bump to roughness, which, you know, is, you know, use it with caution because the file sizes are pretty hefty. But, you know, it's the concept that, you know, as you move away from an object in the past, you used to lose all that, you know, all that lovely, you know, the scratches and the smudges and that micro faceted detail that you spent ages crafting. Well, now with bump to roughness, it does a thing where, you know, the closer you get to an object, it's using the bump, and then as you start to step away and move away from the object, it then transfers it to being roughness. And if you watch the Kickstarter, you can see it probably a bit more easily.
Yes,
and you have the amazing preset browser, so you can share, you know, save and share all your materials, not just that, your lighting and your HDRIs as well.
And it's not just a preset. It can be an entire network. So you can save your entire network into that thing.
Yes. Yup. And that's the nice thing is if you use the Pixar nodes, you know that if you work in Blender, jump into Houdini, go to Maya or Katana, your networks are always going to work because you're not using non-native DCC nodes. Substance painted to RenderMan 24.1. So, you know, here's the gumball machine. Thank you to Fabio for giving it to us. And so yeah, it's great. Painted in Painter and then exported. I did this before the plugin. So there are two ways of doing it, which, you know, you can see. You know, mine and everyone's favorites, apart from one person. You know, a new simplified.
Who's the one person?
Yeah, I can't tell you. A new simplified color management, and trust me, if you're not rendering in ACCG, then you know, well, yeah, you got to get with it, bro. You know,
you're not Ace.
Yeah, you got to get with it, and it's simple now. There's nothing really you need to do. You can paint in Mari in Aces, and you can also half sort of paint in Substance in Aces. Export. It's just and. Your intensities, your highlights, and your renders will just look better. So,
it makes you look like you know what you're doing.
Just with no effort.
Yeah.
Bit like this.
So make pretty buzzing.
So denoising as well. I mean, you know, this one is the one on the left is 2048 by 848. 664 samples took 4.5 minutes. It's a bit noisy, but you turn the denoise on and, you know, it's not finished. It's, but, you know, if you're doing a pitch or you want to show someone, you don't have to wait 20 minutes. You only got to wait 4. It's not final, but actually for just, you know, getting some stuff done and looking at it, it's, but it's incredible. And then you have to understand that tightrope between the time and the noise, and then
we're kind of running up on the end of the hour. I don't know how,
I'm getting there. PBR metallic workflow, fantastic. Kabloom, stylized looks.
I got it, even though I saw it just for half a second.
You can take this, turn it into this, or that, or this. You can even, I know it's Maya. You can even control where the light goes. So where the light is, it's stylized, and where it's not stylized. Oh, and one last thing. All these films have used it since 1984.
The Wrath of Khan. Did anybody see The Wrath of Khan when it came out? Did you see that, Eugene?
No.
Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan.
I probably have done. I don't remember it. I'll go back after this and watch it.
I saw it. It disturbed me. But the Genesis sequence was early RenderMan, Ray's algorithm.
Right. Fantastic. Well, if you needed more convincing, there you go. And there you are. So don't run off. Register for the next one.
Well, thank you, Eugene. That was an awesome rundown of stuff, and I enjoy the backstory of your career, illustrious and infamous 7-foot missile.
You're welcome.
And
Are we
I
doing
hope the
questions, or-
folks. Are we doing any questions? Well, we can look and see if there's any questions real quick before we could probably take one question. What's a good question? Dun, 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 dun. Do the rest of the speakers want to come back on? Come on, Anselm and Ian. And we can all say goodbye, and then we'll jump into the next session. All right, Eugene, Anselm, thank you guys so much for joining our RenderMan for Blender session.